One of the things I enjoy on a modular is exploring creative signal flow. On top of that, my love for stereo sounds and synthesis is growing fast, and that brought me to a stereo matrix mixer, a tool that makes exploring stereo routing options very easy. I talked about the main concept of a matrix mixer in this video a while ago if you're interested, but the ADAC 814 which I'm using today is a 6 stereo in, 6 stereo out matrix mixer, which opens new possibilities. The module can handle audio and CV, and in this video I will focus on two concepts: setting up stereo audio feedback paths and stacking stereo CV signals to create interesting modulation. In the final chapter, I'll combine both ideas in a single patch. Full disclosure, ADAC sent this module over to me on my request. I have a few more things planned with stereo patches. No money was involved though. This channel is funded by my beloved patrons, which is also where you can get access to PDF sheets with hundreds of patch ideas I used in my videos. But now, let's dive right in. Feedback is a fun concept to explore, and even more so with a true stereo audio path. Here's a simple drone voice, made with an oscillator sent through a mixer and filter. To create simple feedback, you can send the output of a processor, like a filter, back into the mix before that processor. If you want stereo feedback, you can simply copy any part of a voice to create a stereo audio path. With a matrix mixer, the idea is the same. A single oscillator is sent to a stereo input of the mixer, and the stereo output is used to feed the filters. The left and right filter outputs are sent to the left and right inputs of two other channels. This creates manual control over the feedback level of each side. Just like any other signal, you can send feedback through a VCA to control the level. Because the feedback per side is now controlled on the VCAs, the outputs are sent to a single stereo input. Modulating the VCAs with something like unsynced LFOs creates nice shifting asymmetrical stereo feedback sounds. You can experiment with feedback in different points in your patch. Here's a simple oscillator filter voice, complete with sequencer and envelope modulating the filter. That voice is sent to the matrix mixer, and the stereo output is sent to two VCAs to control the volume. A regular random voltage is modulating one of the VCAs and an inverted version the other, creating inverted volume control in the stereo sound. A copy of the outputs is sent to a stereo delay, and a copy of the stereo delay is sent back to a stereo channel on the matrix mixer to create feedback. Because the volume is controlled and shifting, this creates a subtle distorted effect that doesn't run wild. Of course, with a matrix mixer, it's very easy to create direct feedback loops as well. Here, the same simple voice is sent to the first stereo input of the matrix mixer, and the first stereo output is used to listen to. But the matrix mixer can send that signal to multiple stereo outputs. Here, output B is sent to a stereo delay and then back into stereo input 2 of the matrix mixer. Output C is sent to a stereo granular processor and back into input 3 of the mixer. This creates a lot of manual optional feedback routings. Sending input 1 to output A, we hear the dry signal. Sending input 2 and 3 to the first output adds the effects, but only if we send the dry input to those effects. Here's the delay. And here the granular effect. The white knobs control the feedback to self. Instead of the dry signal, you can also send the output of an effect to the input of the other. And of course, add more feedback. You can expand and explore this idea in many ways. For example, because the audio path is fully stereo, you can add interesting stereo movement to the input voice. Here, a simple panner modulated with an LFO is added to show that effect. Similar to single channel audio, you can use VCAs to control the depth of the stereo feedback level, either with a stereo VCA or just two VCAs. Here, the VCAs are modulated with an LFO and smooth random voltage to create interesting movement to the feedback amount. To avoid the VCAs cutting all audible effects, direct outputs from the effects are added as well. Just a little side note, a lot of effects that offer stereo in and outputs actually sum the inputs to mono before applying a stereo effect. To get the most out of interesting stereo setups, it's valuable to have effects that truly apply the effect to each side of the input audio separately. In this video, I use the Chaos Devices Timisoara, which has a selection of true stereo effects, as well as the Happy Nerding Effects aid, also with a selection of true stereo effects. Stereo CV mixing isn't so common, but it's a great trick. The core concept isn't much different from mixing and stacking CV signals like you would in a regular voice. But the stereo setup allows for a lot of added fun. Here, two simple oscillator filter voices are used to create one stereo voice. Both oscillators are controlled with the same sequencer. To create an interesting wide stereo sound, the sequencer is triggering two slightly different envelopes. Those envelopes are sent to the left and right inputs of a channel on the matrix mixer, and the stereo outputs of the first channel are sent to modulate the left and right filters in the stereo voice. More depth can be added by stacking stereo modulation inputs. For example, two LFOs running at different speeds, or a regular and inverted smooth random voltage. The matrix mixer can be used to create a mix of stereo modulation. You can explore different modulation sources and modulate the sources for more depth. Here's just a quick example with the same simple sequence stereo voice. Instead of triggering two envelopes directly, the sequencer's clock is driving a dual pattern generator. This triggers the envelopes with different patterns, creating even more dynamics. Another fun example is swinging a modulation source from side to side. You can use a panner to swing something like a fast audio rate LFO between the left and right side of the voice. Here, a slow LFO is used to modulate the panner. With modulation ideas like this, you can explore the power of the stereo matrix mixer further. Again, here's the same sequence stereo voice with the addition of a VCA per side. The dual trigger sequence envelopes are added, as well as a regular and inverted random voltage and the panned audio rate modulation. The stereo outputs of the matrix mixer are used to modulate the wave shape, the filter frequency and the VCA levels, all in stereo style. Now all stereo modulation can be mixed to all stereo outputs to create a dynamic voice. It's always worth it to explore more relation between modulators. For example, you can use a copy of the regular and inverted random voltage to modulate the envelope shape or decay time to create nice stereo movement. Here, the audio outputs are sent through a stereo delay, which creates more modulation options. You can take a copy of any of the mix out sides to add some movement to an effect. But here, the right side of the fourth stereo output is used, so a unique CV mix can be sent to the effect module. The matrix mixer makes it easy to experiment with signal routing. Here's a single oscillator stereo drone voice, each side with bandpass filter and VCA. A regular and inverted version of a smooth random signal are sent to the first channel of the matrix mixer, and the first stereo output is modulating the filters. It's easy to patch inverted versions of a signal just by cross-patching the outputs. For example, patch a left output to modulate the right voice and the right output to modulate the left voice. In this setup, that means that when a random voltage opens the filter on one side, that side has its volume reduced, creating a balancing effect. To show another fun example, a steady clock is triggering an envelope sent to a second stereo channel. This envelope can be sent to the filters and VCAs, but another output pair is used to modulate the bandwidth of the filters. On top of that, a single output is sent through a CV delay module and sent back to a third input. This makes it possible to send CV inputs into a delayed loop and create CV feedback. When you combine both ideas, you add a lot of control and depth to a single voice. This is a point I love to reach with modular voices. Single sounds that have enough depth to be in the front and focus for the listener without needing tons of layers. On top of that, with a good set of character shaping options, you can sculpt and evolve a sound over time to bring storytelling and development. Here's the voice used in the chapter on stereo CV mixing, effectively using a 3x3 stereo in and output matrix mixer to route 3 sets of stereo modulation signals to the left and right side of different points in a single voice. That 3x3 stereo matrix section is made with this quarter corner of the module, meaning you can use this opposite quarter as an independent second 3x3 stereo matrix mixer. Here, that section is used to create audio feedback. The stereo voice is sent to the fourth input and the fourth output is used to listen to. The fifth and sixth in and outputs are used to create feedback loops for a stereo delay and reverb effect. Remember, the matrix mixer allows you to route the effect any way you want. You can have the dry signal and both effects in parallel, or run the dry through the effects in series in any order you want. Let's stop listening to the dry signal. Send the dry to the delay into the reverb, and listen to the reverb. Let's reset all that. Send the dry signal into the reverb first, then the reverb to the delay, and listen to that. On top of that, even though in this graphic both sections of the matrix mixer are shown separate, they are not. You can send any input to any output, which means you can send all modulation signals into the audio path if you want. That doesn't make a lot of sense unless you tune the audio rate modulation. But more interesting, you can use any of the stereo audio outputs as a modulation source for parameters in your patch as well, and that can be worth exploring. Here's a mix of the dry signal, delay, and reverb. Using some of these as modulation can have a subtle textured effect, for example reverb to VCA modulation. Other routings are more extreme, like the dry output to filter modulation. In any case, all these options allow you to build, develop and change a voice over time. If you'd like to learn more, have a look here, and as always, smash that like, subscribe and bell button if you want to see more Mynmytar content from me. But that's it for now, thanks for watching, and see you next time.